This is episode 34 and a half of Stay on Topic. To my left, the William Hanna of Stay on Topic, Bob Ricotta.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Where can we find you on the internet?
Well, I'm at Bob Ricotta on Twitter, but I never go to Twitter, so you're better off hitting me up on Facebook at Bob Ricotta.
Which is a private account, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can send me messages.
Okay.
I do check the messages.
And that other voice you heard was the Joseph Barbera of Stay on Topic, James Post.
Well, now I'm just too insulted to even continue with this.
And where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
At PostJam9.
And I'm Chris Gill. I'm really more of the filmation of Stay on Topic. And you can find me on Twitter at Giltastrophe.
You don't want to be the Don Bluth?
I didn't even think of Don Bluth. No, I'm really much more filmation, which kind of sucks. So this week was quiet except for one big story. The start of the undoing of the Iran nuclear deal.
Donald Trump pulls out.
He just seems to be intent on undoing everything his predecessor did. That seems to be his only goal in life. Because Barack Obama made fun of him at a correspondence dinner once.
You're going to pull this whole presidency back to that one trauma?
That one trauma.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, why? Why would we bail on this?
I think it's conservatives never liked the deal.
No.
Now, James, correct me if I'm wrong. Donald Trump is saying that we gave Iran millions and millions of dollars. All we did was unfreeze their assets, right?
Yeah, I mean that's been a piece of misinformation that's been going around since this was first, brought up.
Well, we enable them to make money, but we're not.
Yeah.
We're not handing them.
It didn't cost us anything.
Yeah, it's not like we're shipping boatloads of dollar bills over there.
No, we didn't give them money.
No.
And
the main objection that Trump and other conservatives have raised is the fact that the deal sunsets, which was, a major point of contention in negotiating it in the first place. But the Iranians still insist, and the law is really on their side, that as signatories to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, they have a right to a peaceful nuclear power program. And that's what they say they want to continue when the 10 years was up on this deal.
And despite the sirens in the background, this is not a bunker episode.
and I mean, so the deal sunsets. So, you renegotiate every deal sunsets at some point.
But I mean, no, that's and that's where you get into sort of Donald Trump land, where he thinks that there could have been a version of this deal that was forever. And that's not the way international treaties work.
And the thing that this deal gave us was verification. We had inspection, the right to inspect their nuclear facilities.
Well, the IAEA had the right.
Right.
We don't have direct access.
No.
And that's something else. That there are still people on the conservative side who say we can't trust the IAEA and that it should have been direct access by American inspectors. That was never going to happen. There would have been no deal.
Once again, it's not unheard of to have a third party who is supposed to be neutral be able to verify this deal. That's not an outrageous concession.
No. I mean, there was nothing crazy about this deal. I mean, it's in line with the kinds of deals we've had with other nations. I mean, obviously, when the subject is potential nuclear weapons, that raises the stakes, but, nothing else about the deal was strange or unprecedented.
And it sets us up to look like we're going it alone.
Yeah.
Our European allies were in favor of us staying in the deal. They're going to apparently still honor the deal.
Which means they're companies are going to continue to do business with the Iranians, which puts us in the position, because of us reimposing sanctions, that we could be penalizing companies in our European ally nations for dealing with the Iranians.
After slapping tariffs on them.
Yes. No, it's going to increase the international isolation of the United States.
Which is more of a libertarian kind of approach than a Republican approach, I would.
Yeah.
But we are easing sanctions on a Chinese cell phone manufacturer because it costs too many jobs in China. I just read that headline today. Trump is rolling back some sanctions that he placed on this Chinese cell phone manufacturer. I believe it's the third largest cell phone manufacturer in China.
And I can't remember the name of it.
Was it Hawaii or
Hawaii? Yeah.
I'm butchering that pronunciation, by the way.
But apparently, the leader of China, and his name escapes me, but asked Donald Trump to ease these sanctions because they were costing jobs in China, and he caved.
He's a deal maker. He knows what he's doing.
Well, and that's, it's hard to look at the pullout from the Iranian nuclear treaty without looking at what's going on side by side with it, which is the move toward talks with North Korea. A lot of people have made the point that this sort of sends the impression that the U.S. isn't willing to deal until you actually have a working nuclear weapon. Because, all of the other elements aside, it looks like the reason that North Korea has the leverage to bring an American leader to face-to-face talks is because they do have weapons and they are a threat to our allies. And Iran was never to that point.
Of course, now they may be under rubble, but we don't know that for sure. So
yeah, that whole thing with them destroying their testing facilities is strange,
to say the least.
Because I think we discussed this last time. There was already a lot of talk about some geological seismic information that led people to believe that their underground testing facilities had at least partially collapsed already. So to then just finish destroying them really isn't that much of an olive branch.
No.
And it's just like, the release of the 3 American prisoners, which obviously is great for them and their families. But that's just, they're drawing on the Chinese playbook.
Right.
Whenever there's a major, trade negotiation or whatever between the U.S. and the Chinese, they always release some prisoners. That's, it's a way of looking like the good guy.
A real deal maker would have just traded Dennis Rodman for them. As far as pop culture, like just Infinity War is just rolling.
Yeah.
What was their numbers in China?
Yeah, I mean they're well over $1 billion.
Yeah.
And just steamrolling everything. The first real challenger comes out this week, Deadpool 2.
Yeah, this week?
Yeah, this weekend. I liked the first Deadpool.
Oh, I loved it.
I liked the video game better because it was a better representation of the character.
I thought the video game was funny and well performed and was created by people who had never made a video game before mechanically.
High Moon.
I know, but that's how it felt to me.
See, and I think this is where the purist in you kind of ruins these kinds of experiences.
It didn't in the MCU, proper MCU.
You have niggling complaints about every...
I have complaints about continuity, especially as it pertains to their TV stuff not crossing over at all with the big MCU. But no, Deadpool was just Ryan Reynolds getting able to tell dick and fart jokes in a Deadpool costume. I would have liked
really
to have
cool
seen
action.
that opening scene which was basically a test
Yeah.
that they did, was the best thing in the movie. Like, more of that. That, to me, screams Deadpool more than the Ryan Reynolds wham quips.
See, and I thought the relationship with Morena Baccarin was the best thing in the film.
It's totally unbelievable. Completely unbelievable after nobody's going to suck face with that. They didn't make him horrible enough looking, and he should have lost the girl to send him further into,
Madness?
Yeah, exactly.
You wanted it to be more like Logan, where it's just hopeless and dead inside.
Pretty much.
All right.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the first real challenger of the summer to Infinity War. Let's see how Deadpool 2 can stack up. And is Deadpool really going against Infinity War, or its first movie?
Yeah, that's
fair.
well, and is Deadpool 2 Deadpool 2? Because it really looks like they're basically making an X-Force movie.
Yeah.
At some point, he calls it X-Force.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in one of the trailers.
Yeah, and it was down. I was like, that sounds kind of derivative.
I have not seen that. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm be very interested
The
to see the
Deadpool
numbers.
Cinematic Universe.
DPU.
Yeah, that's the only thing really screwing with the Disney Fox deal, because they had so many bombs with the X movies. They finally hit with Deadpool and then sell out.
Yeah.
That's going to be neat to see how they bridge that gap when the time comes, because it's going to come, because Disney's going to own everything. You guys watch, do, or participate in anything cool and or exciting?
No, the weather's finally getting decent, and I'm spending a ton of time outside.
James?
I have not seen the sun in literally weeks.
Oh.
Have not done anything that interesting. I played Rock Band Friday night.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good time.
I'm one episode away from just finishing Jessica Jones. So
Oh, good for you.
we
That's not an easy slog.
no, it's not. No, it's not. It was nice to see David Tennant again.
Yeah, even though it was very forced.
Well, that was when the desperation started to show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Tennant doing the Arkham Knight Batman role. Or
Pretty
Arkham
much.
Knight Joker role, rather.
Pretty much. Yeah, went to the Mid-Ohio Sports Car course for the Acura Honda Indy Grand Prix. IMSA Grand Prix, and that was awesome. What a great little track.
Yeah.
For such a short track, the elevation just blows your mind. Like, they are literally climbing 2-story buildings and dropping 3 stories in a matter of 500 yards?
Yeah.
It's incredible. I recommend everyone go to that track and check it out. Not a bad seat in the house for a road course.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. But they don't have showers or anything, so
Got pretty ripe.
got a little right.
Wow. That's odd. Is it just not a camping oriented facility, or?
They have camping. They'll let you park an RV or put up a tent.
Yeah.
And they have places
Well, you
for you
park
to
an
do
RV,
so.
you have your own shower.
Yep. We did not. But great time. Suggest anyone, if you want to go to a cool new racetrack, it's only 5 hours away from South Central New York. That sounded weird.
Yeah.
But on to today's big topic. Our top 5 favorite? Best? Favorite.
Favorite. Yeah,
Favorite.
let's call
Yeah.
it fair. That's fair.
Favorite cartoons of our childhood. Not of all time.
No.
And just to begin with, I think we should all go down the line and just mention our age so people know where
Well,
we're coming from.
then we start with our elders.
That would be me. I am 52, so the cartoons that are on my list are 60s and 70s cartoons. By the time 1980 rolled around, I'd pretty much stopped watching cartoons and started masturbating, and still to this day. In fact, right now.
That's why the napkins
that went
are here.
downhill fast.
That's
And
what she
yeah.
said.
I'm not going to tell you my age. I was born in 73. You guys figure it out. Just kind of on the tail end of when you stopped watching, I would have started. So that kind of thing. So that would have taken me through the mid 70s to just up to the mid 80s, where the female form proved more pleasing than what was moving on my television, and had to go get me some of that.
Wow, you said it a lot nicer than I said it.
With varying degrees of success or failure. James.
And yes, I was born in 79. I am 39 years old. So my cartoon watching is basically, early to mid 80s through the early 90s and into the mid 90s, because as I reached the age where I started noticing girls, I mostly noticed that they were not noticing me. So I went back to my cartoons.
And masturbating. So, yeah, we got 3 solid generations of cartoon watchers. Nice broad.
Yeah, that's
Range
basically
of-
to explain to listeners why, A, we thought this was an interesting topic, and B, why our lists are going to be very different from each other.
Yeah, I don't think we have one crossover.
No.
Which is kind of rare for our lists.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with Bob. Bob, what...
Well, I'd like to start off by saying that by going over the list and doing a little bit of research, I discovered that children are pretty indiscriminate consumers of media. They'll pretty much... And, I grew up in an era when there was no Nickelodeon, there was no Cartoon Network.
It's Saturday mornings and after school.
Right. That was pretty much it. So we watched anything that was animated that was put in front of us. And number 2, I really missed out on the golden age of cartoons. And I know people are saying, well, what, you had Looney Tunes, you had the Jetsons, you had the Flintstones. Yeah, but I didn't have, in the 80s or maybe even the 70s, toy companies really clued into the concept of using cartoons to sell toys.
Well, I hate to interrupt because that's...
Yeah, no.
Well, it's something that I was going to mention in one of my one of the cartoons on my list anyway. That wasn't a new discovery for companies. That was a gift given to us by Ronald Reagan. Under earlier regulatory regimes, that would have been illegal to use cartoons on television, on broadcast television, to market to children. That was deregulated in the early 80s.
Then how do you explain the Flintstone smoking commercials?
That wasn't marketed to children.
that was an actual thing.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I've seen it. But no, you mentioned Flintstones and the Jetsons. Both of those were really more marketed almost at adults.
They had
You know,
more
they're-
adult themes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very just kind of animated sitcoms,
Mhm.
especially the Flintstones.
And neither of which were very interesting.
But by the time I discovered them, they were playing on Saturday morning. I believe their original airing was an evening.
Yeah.
But by the time I discovered them, they'd made it to the Saturday morning lineup.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was my preamble. So my number 1 and 2 are clearly my top 2. The other 3, there's no particular order. Number 5 is the Herculoids.
Ah, yes.
Okay.
It ran for 1 year. There were 19 episodes.
That many.
Well, see, and that's the thing about cartoons is we're going way back, and memory is very unreliable. If I watched any of these right now, I would be like, oh my God, this is crap. But as a kid, seeing a rhinoceros triceratops shoot projectiles out of its horn, I mean, that was cool ass shit to me.
Yeah.
It fed into my love of monsters and science fiction. Well, I mean, I didn't love science fiction at that time, but it probably created an early interest in science fiction.
And it was a very 60s and early 70s vision of science fiction fantasy.
Yeah.
It echoes the almost surrealist stuff that was going on in writing at that time.
Yes. But I was very surprised to find out there were only 19 episodes.
Yeah.
Because it felt like it ran for 5 years.
Well, and it was still in syndication when I was a kid.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the interesting about cartoons is how they can recycle them, and a new generation will find them interesting again because
Yeah.
once again, children will watch anything you put in front of them. So yes, the Herculoids, including Gloop and Gleep, who would later make appearances on Harvey Birdman, Attorney.
Did they?
Yes.
Oh, I gotta look that up.
Well, that was part of the same block as the original Birdman show, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Birdman.
nice. I believe that was also
I want that as a ringtone so bad now.
I think that's where Space Ghost also came from.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, there was a whole
the
block.
serious Space Ghost.
Yes,
not Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Which is a whole nother list, but
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
And wasn't
And it's-
Thundar the Barbarian in the mix?
That's yeah.
I don't know if that was the same company or Thundar was a ripoff of the Herculoids.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a spin-off, rip-off. Every time I watched it, I was like, this is cheap-ass Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because he had, like, the fire sword and the Chewbacca-looking thing. Or what was the...
Ukla the Mock.
Ukla the Mock.
Yes.
Which
Wow.
until I did my research, I thought that was from Herculoids, but no, that's from Thundar.
Okay.
So all right, number 5 is Herculoids. Chris?
Yeah, I didn't really put these in. I put them in an order as I remembered them.
Yeah, mine aren't really in any kind of order.
So the first cartoon that really connected with me on any level whatsoever, it was while it was in syndication. And you're going to hear this a lot throughout the podcast because these things went into syndication and stayed there for decades.
Yeah.
Including The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Friends. Its initial run was 1959 to 1964. And it introduced you not only to Rocky, Bullwinkle, Natasha, and Boris, the two greatest comic foils in cartoon history, but also like Dudley Do-Right, Mr. Peabody, and Sherman.
Yeah.
And yeah, the best thing was it was so irreverent for its time and quippy as hell and smart ass.
And it was another cartoon that was marketed for adults
It
because
sure seemed like it.
a
when
lot
you
of
were a
that
kid.
humor a 7, 8, 9-year-old would not get.
Like I constantly had to ask my parents, what did that mean?
Right.
Like it's supposed to be funny. The timing of it seemed like it should be funny, but what does it mean?
And
yeah,
I mean,
that
there's a
was-
lot of Cold War references in there.
Yeah. So that was the first one I remember that really stuck with me, and still to this day, I just really appreciate it for how far ahead of its time it was. Because now you see it, and they're all kind of irreverent and smart alecky and shit. But Rocky and Bullwinkle were the first I remember to ever do that. James, the baby of the group.
Yeah, and actually the first one I put on my list is the most obvious for someone of my generation.
He-Man.
No.
Oh.
And it's also the latest airing period of any of the ones on my list, which is Batman the Animated Series.
Yep.
Good choice.
85 episodes from 1992 to 1995, but that gets really wonky because it bled into the DC animated universe, which was largely great.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons that, I think the show is important, because it made that happen, and it's the only place that DC properties have been adapted well.
The
And-
Arkham games?
Yeah. The show had adult themes. It featured villains actually firing guns. They didn't hit anybody except one episode. Gordon got shot.
Really?
Yeah.
So they didn't do the Killing Joke?
No. And just as an aside, the Mask of the Phantasm movie that was based on this series is, I think, my number 2 Batman movie behind The Dark Knight.
Yeah, that team of Paul Dini and Bruce Timm
Yeah.
just created gold.
Yeah.
It's the origin of the Mark Hamill Joker,
Mhm.
which is to me still definitive.
As is Conroy is Batman.
Oh, that was in my notes too. To me, he is still the definitive Batman voice and characterization
Mm-hmm.
of Batman. As the brooding is there, but it's mostly businesslike.
It's a business-like anger.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Like,
perfect tone.
This is his job. This is what he does, and he does it full on. And it's not an expression of his insanity. the way it's played. This is just something he's taken on himself, which I think is a much more grounded basis for which to tell a bunch of other stories instead of being focused on dead parents.
Yeah. Kind of heavy at 4 PM after school,
Yeah.
which is what this was engineered for, was the after school crowd. It wasn't
Yep.
a Saturday morning thing. Because by then, Saturday morning had kind of become passe.
Yeah, that
Because
was
you were
pretty much
moving
over
into
by
the
then.
era of the Cartoon Networks and
Yeah.
Nickelodeons.
But it's funny because I would theoretically be of the generation that, that started to be a thing, but I never had cable.
Mm.
We lived out in the middle of nowhere in Indiana, and they wouldn't even run cable to our house.
I don't think you
God
need to
damn
say.
Mike Pence.
I don't think you need to say both middle of nowhere and Indiana. One or the other would have sufficed.
Okay.
Bob, what's
All
your
right.
next tune?
My next one is Scooby's All Star Laugh Olympics.
I love those.
Wow.
Those were great.
Yes, they were.
They're really rottens.
Yes. I think it appealed to me because you had everybody on one show.
Yep.
Um,
Like Infinity War every weekend.
it was a parody of both the Battle of the Network Stars, which was huge back then,
Yeah.
and it was, Olympics. So they had events and they were competing against one another, and different teams would win. I think the bad guys even won an episode or two. It ran 16 episodes in 77 and 78, an additional 8 episodes in 78 and 79. There were 45 Hanna-Barbera characters on the show. The characters were broken up into 3 teams. The Scooby Doobies, come on,
I know.
which consisted mostly of 1970s Hanna-Barbera characters. The Yogi Yahooies, that consisted mostly of 50s and 60s cartoon characters. And the Really Rottens, I don't know if it was because of copyright issues. They only had 2 or 3 characters that were from other cartoons. The rest were mostly original characters.
Yeah, I don't think they had that many villains, really. Did they?
No, not really. But it was fun to see characters from different shows interacting and competing in Olympic-like events.
Did you?
I always get it confused with Wacky Races.
That was made my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
I used to love the Wacky Races too, although I liked Laugh Olympics more because it had more recognizable characters.
Yeah.
Did you see? Kind of off the subject. But have you ever seen the Robot Chicken skit of the Laugh Olympics doing Munich?
No.
Oh my God.
It is so darkly
Now I have to,
hysterical.
though.
Yep.
I wish we could drop video clips into our
Oh, God.
podcast.
Everyone check that out. It is just, especially if you've seen the movie Munich. If not, and you're familiar with what happened in Munich, check it out.
The movie Munich's great, by the way.
Yeah.
And especially if you're a Holocaust survivor.
I know that's a big demo for a stand
Yeah,
topic.
that's, the kind of people for whom that will be really funny.
Chris, what do you got?
I want to see that now. I have Battle of the Planets, which is a real
Is that the anime?
sort of, but not really. In the 60s in Japan, there was a show called Science Ninja Team Gatchaman.
Yep.
Sandy Frank, who was a producer, he produced Name That Tune and The Dating Game. But he saw this at Cannes, I think it was. And he's like, you know what? I want to develop that for America. So he developed Battle of the Planets, which was exactly that animation style, exactly those characters, with a lot less graphic violence and no swearing.
So it was an original production. It wasn't.
It wasn't an original
wasn't
production.
a localization.
No, and they leaned on the original artists and the team of artists, to help them translate it for American audiences.
Huh.
It would later become G-Force.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there somebody on the team who communicated completely in whistles and clicks?
A monkey.
Okay.
Yep. There was a monkey and the name escapes me. But this ran from 1978 to 1980. Totally a syndicated show. Like, networks did not pick it up.
Yeah.
It was up to 85 episodes in all. Casey Kasem did voice work. That was part of the Americanization of it. they were like, "Who is more American than Casey Kasem?" They
I
got
mean,
him to do it.
the Lebanese isn't he?
I don't know what Casey Kasem.
He's
What nationality?
Middle
he is.
Eastern of some kind.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sandy Frank adapted it. Just a really weird turn for a guy that was doing game shows.
Yeah.
But it stuck with me. Like Bob said about the Herculoids with that whacked out sci-fi anime
Yeah.
aesthetic, I totally dug it. Yeah, so it's 5 people in really cool suits fighting a guy named Zoltar. Not the Zoltar from the movie Big.
Although that would also have been a
That
good
would have
show.
been great. James, what do you got?
I've got what's probably the most predictable thing on my list for someone of my age, which is Transformers. What's now known as Gen 1 Transformers,
Yeah.
the original cartoon series. Ran from 84 to 87. There were 98 episodes. And maybe people know this now. I knew nothing about it at the time. The story and character. This was literally based on Hasbro at a toy show in Japan, seeing these things called Diaclones,
Yeah, I forget the original names.
which were transforming toys, and coming up with this idea to market them using television, which they were allowed to do now. And they had no idea what kind of story setting characters they were going to do. So they went to Jim Shooter at Marvel Comics. And basically the story and the characters are entirely the creation of Jim Shooter and Bob Budiansky. Am I pronouncing that right?
And Larry Hama. Larry
Yeah.
Hama played a huge role in both writing all the backstories for all these characters,
Yeah.
for both that and another cartoon that will be mentioned later.
Yeah. Well, and this is more at the conceptual level. Like
Right.
this, it was Shooter and Budiansky who wrote the treatment that got the show greenlit,
Yeah.
basically. And the show was obviously, compared to something like Batman the Animated Series, it was very, very kid level.
Mm.
And which makes sense. In 1984 I was 5, and in 1987 I was 8. But ironically, the drive to keep introducing new toys into the TV series kind of left me with a sense of a constantly expanding universe. Like there was some background lore or something to this, which there kind of wasn't yet at that point.
Right.
But it was enough to keep me hooked. I felt like there was always more I wasn't seeing because they kept bringing in characters.
Nope.
They bring in, Skyfire, who was the plane that was the older kind of character, and was a really expensive toy, by the way.
Yeah, it was.
So when did
Though.
when did the comic books come out for Transformers?
About the same time.
Around the same time.
Okay.
Almost in conjunction.
So did they fill in the lore that you were
Well, there's a lot more of it
Oh,
in there.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the comics go deep.
as I guess you'd have to?
Yeah.
They should have used that for the modern series of movies. They should have used the comic backstories.
Yeah, they didn't think of that at all. Like,
They didn't think of it. Was Michael Bay. They didn't think of anything.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I watch Transformers, quite regularly, especially the first, couple seasons.
yeah,
And it was good, but man, it was repetitive.
it was.
The nice thing, and again, thanks to Marvel Comics, there was a real sense of continuity.
Yeah,
Things that happened in one episode affected the episodes after, which you did not get from cartoons of that era.
unless you missed the movie in the summer of '86 and went back to try and watch the show, and you're like, "What the holy fuck just happened? Everyone is dead and everyone is different."
Everyone sounds like Sammy Hagar.
Yes.
What do you got, Bob?
All right, number 3, I guess, the Super Friends.
That made my honorable mention.
It ran from and this shocked me. It ran from 1973 to 1986.
Yeah, dude, that had a long run.
Yeah, 108 episodes, 109 episodes. I had no clue that it went that long. But
Cartoons are weird though, because that's a long run and not that many episodes for such a long run, whereas Transformers was 3 years and it was 100 episodes.
wow.
Yeah.
It's
cartoons don't adhere to the same standards.
No,
that,
there's
like,
no season structure or
sitcoms
anything.
or dramas
Right,
do.
right.
It's like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is not on my list, by the way.
Good.
But, they did like 52 episodes in a year.
Wow.
You know?
That's staggering.
Yeah.
Jeez. Anyway, Bob.
Super Friends, it was basically Justice League light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aquaman, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and then
You left out the most important characters.
The Red Tornado.
I'm getting to Marvin and
Wendy?
thank you, Marvin, Wendy, and Supermutt. Which did you know they made a gritty reboot of Supermutt?
No.
Yeah, it was in an actual DC comic where
Oh, yeah.
it made a cracked list, and apparently Supermutt went crazy and killed Marvin.
And he was this giant hulking brute in just one-off shot. And there's just like the mangled corpse of Marvin.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
But I don't know if this ignited my love of comic books and superheroes, but it certainly was an early influencer. And they're horrible. They are
Yeah,
horrible.
they're pretty bad to watch.
And racist at times.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit.
But I like the fact that you had your core group, but then every week you'd have another, a guest, like Red Tornado, I think you mentioned.
Yeah.
So you'd get, new superheroes introduced that you'd never heard of. The villains, I liked Black Manta.
He was just cool looking.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't know what he
was it-
does, but
Was it the Earth 2 Lois Lane Red Tornado?
I was
Never mind.
I was
That really was a thing, though.
I was 7. I really didn't track on the multiverse at that point. And then, Wendy and Marvin and Wonder Mutt, people were like, why are these people hanging around with Superman? So they booted them and then brought in the Wonder Twins, who have become part of pop culture. Wonder Twin powers activate. Who doesn't,
Right.
Who's never tried that?
And, poor Zan, all he could do is turn into water.
and ice.
Form of an ice bridge, a bucket of water. Great. If you're fighting the Wicked Witch of the West, you're set. But otherwise, limited uses, Zan.
We're talking about DC Comics. This is these are the people who brought us Arm Fall Off Boy. They're not concerned with whether powers are particularly useful.
And yet, as ridiculous as Super Friends got, still better than the movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Better than Dawn of Justice.
Hot take.
Not really.
Chris?
Again, syndication. And it's going to require a little picking through. But Looney Tunes / Merry Melodies ran initially as movie intros. Started in 1930 and ran through 69. Looney Tunes proper did. But the ones that really caught me were the Friz Freeling, Tex Avery Looney Tunes before Chuck Jones really was left to his own devices and really took him down some weird paths in the late 60s. But they got really weird after 64. Because trying to remember, there was a buyout involved and Freeling and Avery were out.
Yeah.
And Chuck Jones took over. He was the senior most director-writer, and then he took too much acid. But the impact on pop culture from that golden stretch is undeniable. And the mark that they've left through, especially the 90s with the Animaniacs and the Tiny Toons, they kind of came back. And, yeah, it's some of the best animation ever done. It was way too funny for kids at times. Again, very smart ass and an obvious response to what Disney was doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to be the goody two shoes. We're not. And it was so obvious what they were doing, and I loved every second of it.
And ironically enough, Looney Tunes made my list of cartoons I hated.
Really?
Yes, because
I made a list of cartoons you hated?
It's a short list, but I like my protagonists to be good guys. and Bugs Bunny was kind of an asshole.
Oh, he was a total dick.
So I mean, I liked the Roadrunner. I liked Wile E. Coyote. Didn't like Bugs Bunny so much.
But there were dicks to predators.
Sometimes, and sometimes they were just dicks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, true, because why fuck with Daffy so bad?
Yeah,
I mean, really.
I mean, Daffy obviously had mental illnesses.
Anger, he's probably bipolar. But yeah, they... Yes, James?
No, I just love that we're diagnosing Daffy Duck.
And that, speaking of bipolar, that reminds me of one of my favorite characters on The Tick, Bipolar Bear. Anyway, we digress.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Stan.
The good Looney Tunes, the Freeling Avery Looney Tunes. That's number 3. James, what do you got?
I'm going to preface this by saying, fuck you
Mm-hmm.
to anyone who has anything to say in response to this.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Next thing on my list is the Gummy Bears.
That's why he didn't want to text us in advance.
The full title being Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears. Ran from 1985 to 1990. 65 episodes.
We're talking about the Gummy Bears.
But actually, the 65 episodes, there were 95 stories because some of the episodes were 2 segments. It featured the catchiest theme song of all time.
Sing it.
Yeah.
I'm not singing it. The show had silly, goofy characters and silly, goofy villains. But, and this is kind of a running theme for me with a lot of these shows, is it kept me engaged because the underlying idea, you have these bears that bounce around and they live in a tree. But
You're not helping your case.
the underlying lore is that there are lots of other talking bears, a whole civilization of them, and they've become separated from them.
Like a Watership Down kind of thing?
Sort of. And over the course of the series, because it was actually very serialized, they're like looking for, they find abandoned ruins from the other gummies. They find new technology developed by other gummy bears that they learn to make use of. Magical artifacts and stuff. Like, there's a lot of like lore and backstory
So there was
going
a
on there.
frustrated fantasy writer that got this gig.
Yeah. But no, I don't disagree with anyone who would say the show is, goofy and silly as hell. But I think they did a good job of mixing that with what was actually a pretty interesting underlying story.
All right.
That
Did they ever do battle with the gummy worms?
No.
They rode the gummer. It was like Dune.
That would have been awesome, but no. And it actually had an interesting, one of the odd mechanics of the show was they drink this juice from gummy berries. And for the bears, all it does is make them bounce around. If humans drink it, it makes them super strong. So the villains are trying to always get this stuff.
Okay.
And it's I don't know if it's like a drug metaphor or what they were doing
Yeah.
there, but it's kind of weird because it's like, they've got this innocent use for it, but if it gets into the wrong hands, like somebody could take over the castle. Because it's also set in medieval times.
Oh, okay.
So was their mortal enemy the Swedish fish?
Their mortal enemy was the band fish.
They paid in juju coins. Bob, do you have anything more or less ridiculous than that?
I mean, we're talking about cartoons. I'm 50
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah.
This is all kind of ridiculous.
I'm still waiting for you to bring up the thing that I still don't remember what it was called, but it was a real show. The thing that from Pulp Fiction that Bruce Willis's character is watching when he's a kid.
I don't know what it's called either, but it haunts my dreams. Number 2, and my last 2 are head and shoulders above anything else on my list. Number 2 is Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? I mean,
Match.
it's a classic. It started in 1969,
Drug-fueled classic.
and it's still running.
In one
Some form or another, yeah.
In fact, J.M. DeMatteis, who wrote for Justice League International and wrote the classic Kraven's Last Hunt, writes Scooby-Doo shit now.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's inspired, 2 movies, a couple direct-to-DVD movies.
Some hot cosplay.
Oh, yeah. and in doing my research, do you know what Shaggy's real name is?
No.
It is Norville Rogers.
Huh.
I think I knew that at one point.
You'll win some bar bets on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Norville Rogers. I loved the Monster of the Week format.
Mhm.
And, as an adult, and it even one of my favorite shows of all time, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, is very derivative
Yeah,
of.
no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, and self-referent. They call themselves the Scoobies. The whole Monster of the Week theme. I was kind of disappointed that every week it turned out to be a real human being.
Yeah.
Why can't they catch a real monster now and then?
Until you got into some of the later shows when they had 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo and some of the offshoot shows.
Yeah, see,
There was real supernatural shit going on, and really you could argue that the Harlem Globetrotters are actually supernatural.
You beat me to the guest spots.
I loved Batman and
Batman.
Robin. Yeah.
Yeah.
They lost me around the whole Scrappy Doo, Scooby Dum kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously Scooby Dum had developmental disabilities. Not funny.
No, well, or he just.
Or he's Southern. Which, again, you don't have to say both.
Wow.
So yeah, I loved Scooby Doo.
I'm out.
Chris?
Hard to top that one. Yeah, this is one of, much like you, my top 2. This one put me on my ass at a certain time of day every time it was on. G.I. Joe ran from 83 to 86, 95 episodes in all. And that includes the 2 early versions, which were 3-parters.
Yeah.
Like the first G.I. Joe cartoons were 3-parters. It was kind of like a test. And much to James's point with the Transformers, Hasbro had these 2 properties, said, hey, man, we need help fleshing these out. And Larry Hama wrote all those little cards on the back of the G.I. Joes.
Yeah.
Larry Hama wrote those and, gave the show direction. Again, had continuity. One episode impacted the others. And a massive cast. Much to Bob's point on the Laugh Olympics. So many characters to play with, and just a good time.
And they each had their own specialty.
Yeah.
Yep. Own little even snow job.
Pretty specialized, but
Yeah. The animation was meh, but the storylines got pretty stupid and crazy. Like the Weather Dominator 3-parter.
yeah.
And we're never quite sure what Cobra's cause was for being a terrorist group. Like,
Yeah.
Why are they terrorizing people?
Yeah, and they were identified on the show as terrorists.
A terrorist group. Yeah.
But
G.I.
terrorism
Joe
is by
fought terrorist groups. That's how it was defined in the intro of the show.
yeah, but by definition, terrorism is violence in pursuit of a political change.
Weren't they fighting for a Palestinian homeland?
That's what the Cobra Commander Hood represented. And Destro Silver. Actually, Destro is the smartest one of the bunch in Cobra.
Yeah.
And he was just an arms dealer.
What does Serpentor represent then?
No idea. That's where they lost me.
Yeah, that was one of the, because obviously I watched that too, but that was one of those where when they decided to get like deeper into the lore and backstory, it just got worse.
Yeah, just yeah. So yeah, G.I. Joe put me on my ass every day after school when that shit was on. It was tight. James, what do you got for your number 2?
Voltron.
Nice.
Yep.
1984 to 1985, 52 episodes.
Wow, it was only on 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Huh.
And this is, I'm just going to quote straight from Wikipedia because I couldn't explain it any better. The first season of Voltron was adapted from the Japanese anime show Beast King Go Lion. The second season, which was actually the vehicle team Voltron, wasn't Lions anymore, it was Cars, was adapted from a completely unrelated anime series called Armored Fleet Dairuger XV.
I forgot about the Voltron's wheels.
So I think, to me, that's an amazing adaptation job, because as a kid watching that show, I had no idea I was watching two completely unrelated shows. Because it goes beyond what they did with like Power Rangers, where they take the Japanese footage from one show and then they cut in the Americans for the non-fight scenes.
Right.
This is mixing together two completely unrelated television shows and making it look like, a seamless...
Look pretty seamless.
Yeah. And again, that was a show that managed to sort of imply an extensive, complex backstory, but didn't really let it bog things down much. They didn't spin their wheels talking about it a lot.
And the animation style was so rare for the time. It influenced other things.
And it wasn't really in the mainstream of what Japanese animation was at that time either.
No.
And, giant lion robots who join up to form another giant robot,
Pretty good shit.
Who doesn't love that?
Yes.
Sure.
Kids love that shit.
Adults love that shit.
What do you got, Bob, for your Uno?
Number one, and still my favorite, Tom and Jerry.
You like Tom and Jerry, but dislike Looney Tunes.
Correct.
Even though the violence is pretty much the same.
Yeah, but...
Jerry is a fucking dick.
No, he's just trying to live his life, and Tom is trying to eat him. So he's got to defend himself, and he's a little mouse.
Got some moral relativism going on here with the Tom and Jerry.
I liked, in retrospect, I liked the fact that it was basically a silent movie. I mean, they didn't talk for the most part until much later. The supporting characters talked, but Tom and Jerry were silent. They did all of their emoting through actions and facial expressions.
It was an animation tour de force.
Yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't expensive, like high frame rate animation, but what they had to work with, given that it was a series and not an animated feature, like they wrung every bit they could out of every frame of that show.
They look great.
Yeah.
And again, another
great use of squash and stretch for motion, and just all of those animation tricks that give you a little more than you can really show on screen. They used every bit of them.
And also ruined by Chuck Jones.
Yeah.
The Chuck Jones years were not kind to Tom or Jerry.
No, they were not. But, it's such a cultural touchstone that The Simpsons parodies them with Itchy and Scratchy.
Yep.
Yeah.
To great effect. I mean, you've made...
Well, and it's funny because my sister and I were banned from watching Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
Because my parents thought it made us fight.
Really?
Yeah, that was a real thing, and they weren't the only ones. That was a thing going around in the media, that the show was encouraging violence.
Oh, it was very violent.
Yeah. Like drinking bleach and shit.
Yeah.
Chris?
The one that every Saturday I had to be on my ass in front of the TV was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Ran from 1981 to 1983. Only 24 episodes. But ran in syndication forever.
That was the one with Iceman and Firestorm, right?
Yep. And the dog. Aunt May's dog.
Wonder Mutt?
No, Miss something.
Miss Thing?
Miss Thang. But yeah, it was every episode you got drop-ins from the Marvel Universe. You had a Captain America episode, you had a Submariner episode, you had a Thor and Loki episode way back in the day. X-Men, that was the first time I ever saw the X-Men was through this, and I was like, well, I needed to get that comic book.
Thanos.
Who's that?
No Thanos.
Who's that short Canadian who's very surly?
Why does he have an Australian accent?
Silver Surfer show up at one point?
Cannot remember a Silver Surfer one, but Fantastic Four was in for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one, I was big into superheroes my whole life, and Spider-Man was the shit. And this gave me Spider-Man every goddamn Saturday with other superheroes just popping in and out. It was terrific. And really, nothing until what? Batman the Animated Series came along that really gave you that.
Yeah, not in a serious way. Not that Spidey and His Amazing Friends was that serious, but
Not really.
but it
Aunt May's
It took-
dog was a major plot point in most episodes.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't that serious.
but I mean it wasn't. They weren't sort of vaudevilled up versions of the characters. They were more
No,
or less
pretty
the
s-
characters from the books.
In fact, Firestar was created for the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to bring that up. I didn't know how deep down the rabbit hole we wanted to go because I always thought that was weird because there were pretty close characters they could have used.
Yeah. I'm surprised they wouldn't have used like Shadowcat or
Yeah.
somebody, but no, they wanted to play off the ice thing. So they created Firestar. Actually shoots microwaves, not fire. Anyway, that's my number one. James, what is your number one?
Again, this isn't really a number one. In fact, it's the weirdest one on my list. And I'm assuming the majority of people who are listening to this will not have heard of it. Star Blazers.
Fancy coats?
No. Ran from 1979 to 1984. 77 episodes. The original airing was only in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Wow.
So I saw it in syndication in Hawaii from 85 to 88. And I didn't realize it was syndication at the time, obviously.
Right,
They
yeah.
were showing it right in order, which you had to, because this was a localization of a Japanese animation show that started in 74 and was one of, if not the very first, fully serialized anime property to be translated into English. You had to watch every episode or you would be lost. And, oh God, I will explain it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, because we're running right up against an hour.
So the show starts with an attack on Earth that doesn't destroy it, but irradiates the whole planet. Everybody's going to be dead in a year. They get contacted by friendly aliens who offer to help them, but in order to get the thing they need to help them, they have to go to the aliens' planet. It's 150,000 light years away. So they also transmit them the plans to make their own star drive. So they raise the sunken World War II Japanese destroyer, the Yamato, from the bottom of the ocean and turn it into a spaceship.
Because that would have been cheaper than building one.
In Japan, this was called Space Battleship Yamato.
Okay.
And the ship has a giant hole in the front that shoots a ridiculous laser that solves every problem. But it was very serialized. The first season is the year it takes for them to go to this other planet, get the cure to save Earth, and come back. And that story closes out in the first season, and then they go on to do something else. Obviously, a very dark theme. Death of the whole human race. There are actual character deaths during the show with funerals. And if you look at the cast list on Wikipedia, there were like 4 or 5 dozen named characters. And it was a huge cast of characters.
And you can get the DVD collection for $91 through Barnes & Noble.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now because I'd never heard of it.
I felt like I was watching an adult show, except with robots and a ship with a giant laser gun in the front. What I didn't realize at the time was I was basically watching naked Japanese nationalist propaganda. The Yamato is a very culturally significant thing for the Japanese. For one thing, there are people who use the term Yamato to refer to Japan in general. It was a former province in Japan that doesn't exist anymore. And the ship, when they built it, was their answer to the overwhelming numbers advantage that the U.S. fleet had in World War II. It was the largest, heaviest, and had the most guns of any battleship ever built at the time. It was 960 feet long.
I'm just
And-
glad you kept this brief.
Sorry. The point being, the Japanese people basically attached their national identity to it at one point. There are multiple museums devoted to this ship. And there were people during the war who were convinced that as long as the ship was afloat, they couldn't lose the war. It was sunk in April of 1945 by American carrier-launched bombers. But yeah, so the idea of raising that ship, turning it into a spaceship, and using it to save the entire human race was very much Japanese nationalism on display. They stripped a lot of that out in the localization, but one of the things that makes me think makes me feel like the show was really interesting under the hood. But I liked it.
So let's do a quick honorable mentions. Bob, what didn't make your list?
All right. Secret Squirrel and Morocco Mole. Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse.
Oh, yeah.
And the original Spider-Man, from which, Spider-Man.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad. It was bad, but it was Spider-Man on my television.
Right, exactly.
So-
Yeah, I had Super Friends, the Pink Panther series that had all those weirdo side characters. Captain Caveman. I don't know why. It was just funny. And hadn't aged well, but Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids.
Wow, in so many ways it has not aged well.
No. Also, an honorable mention, even though it wasn't in my childhood, I love this cartoon to death. Duckman. James, any honorable mentions?
The main two, and I felt bad that they didn't make my list, but I didn't feel like they were. I feel like people are so familiar with them that there wasn't that much interesting to talk about. And that would be Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs.
Yeah, both. More so, I'm more familiar with Animaniacs.
Tiny Toon Adventures was obviously earlier. It was their sort of first Warner Brothers attempt to sort of almost self-parody.
Produced by Spielberg.
Yes.
Both of them.
A much more in-depth characterization and sort of ongoing, not really ongoing storylines, but like coherent stories.
Yeah.
Compared to the older, like the Tex Avery era.
It was no Muppet Babies.
And
Muppet Babies was awesome. Shut up.
I've got to say I'm a little disappointed that two things didn't make either of your lists. I was too old for them. I watched them as a teenager and enjoyed them. Actually, teenager or 20-something. Thundercats.
Blah.
No love for Thundercats.
None. It was garbage.
And
I watched it. It never really got to me.
No.
the 90s X-Men.
No, that was past. I was
Okay.
doing other shit.
I really never watched it. I saw
Yeah.
it later.
Huh. Okay.
One thing we have to mention before we cut loose is we're going to be doing a stay on topic cereal death match. So we need suggestions for cereals,
Yes.
Breakfast cereals.
breakfast cereals, not cereals as in Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
So breakfast cereal death match. Please let us know either at Guiltastrophe
At Bob Ricotta.
At Post JM9.
what cereals you love the most. We need a big list of cereals. If we can, we'd like to do 64.
Yeah, that might be ambitious.
It's ambitious. I don't think it's undoable.
But there are definitely 64 cereals that I would eat.
For sure.
So yeah, let us know what you loved as a kid. What kind of sugary goodness did you stuff in your mouth while watching these very cartoons? And what do you still love today? I mean, if it weren't for the calories, I would eat cereal for dinner at least 4 nights a week.
I can literally sit down with a box of cereal and just wipe it out in one sitting.
Absolutely.
And of course, we will be spending the entire next episode deciding the seeding for this bracket. So
Yes.
tune in for that.
Yeah, we got to figure that out. But yeah, we definitely want to do a death match with cereal.
Yes. All right. So I think that's a wrap, guys.
It's a wrap. James, would you be so kind as to play us out? I was hoping for the gummy bears theme that he promised us.